Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our very first online UX Meetup, where Simon will share some of his experiences on working with data-driven design at Almindelig Brand. We hope that you're up for this, and I'm so happy to see so many people joining. I can see we are 226 people online right now, so I hope that you've had a great morning so far. The agenda for today is that when I'm done with the practicalities, Simon will share how they work with data-driven design at Almindelig Brand. We'll try to keep track on time. We know this is very important to you, so we'll try to do our best. You can ask questions in the QA section here in Zoom, but due to time constraints, we might not be able to go through all questions in this meetup. But no worries, we had scheduled a behind the talk session with Simon where he will answer all relevant questions afterwards. And then we'll send out a short video with his responses. For those of you who don't know Preely is a self-service platform for unmoderated remote user tests. It consists of 3 areas where you can create and distribute your test, where you can host your test panel, and where you can assess your test data and analytics as well. And we track most common usability and UX metrics. We're planning different usability and UX meetups. We already now have a big one coming up in November, and you're of course invited for that one. If COVID allows it, we will host it physically in Copenhagen at Øvad University, and we will also stream it online via Zoom like this one, for those of you who can't join in Copenhagen. The meetup is about next generation remote user testing, and it's a meetup where we'll share insights in a research project we have done together with Øvad University and IT University of Copenhagen, and where 4 of our customers actually also skipped in, namely Nykredit, NewDay, Undo, and Dogwise. You can already now sign up for the meetup on Infinite's homepage, and we will also give you a link to that in the mail we are sending out after this meetup. I think that was all the practical stuff. Simon, I'm so happy to see you here, and I'm looking very much forward to hear you talk about data-driven design at the Almindelig Brand. So take it away. I'll see if I can do so you can share your screen as well. So you should be good to go now.
Yes. Well, thanks a lot, Tina, and thanks a lot, of course, also Klaus and Seppe from Preely for having me and the great discussions we've had leading up to this. So hello, my name is Simon McGilbray, and I am the lead user experience and service designer here at the Alm Brand. We are a financial services company, and I've been working here for about 2.5 years, and I am part of a digital team and a UX community. We're working on improving and developing the digital services for our customers. In addition to that, I've been having a role as a product owner in our kind of agile setup for the past 6 months as well. So yeah, Alm Brand, I'm gonna start by introducing the company. We're a Danish financial services company, and that means that we provide banking services, insurance, and pension as well. And I'm just gonna give you a bit of background about our company. So we are founded in 1792, so that's 228 years ago. So that's quite an old company. We are around 1,700 employees here in Denmark, and we have solely Danish customers. We have about 60,000 bank customers, around 400,000 insurance customers, private and business segment. And then we have about 17,000 customers in pension. So what this kind of goes to show is that we are mainly, the main part of our business comes from insurance, and where we are about the 4th largest company in Denmark for that. And so what we have been working on for the past 1.5 to 2 years is alongside an agile transformation, which is all the rage these days. So I'm sure a lot of you who are employed in larger companies will have been going through this experience of doing sort of agile transformation, trying to kind of move away from a more waterfall-based project models where we do very long projects before we release something. And I've been fortunate enough to be alongside on that journey for Almindelig Brand during the past 1.5 to 2 years. Yeah.
You're not sharing any slides right now if you want to do that, just so you know.
Okay. Well, I do want to do that.
I could imagine.
So that's a great start. Let's see here.
We'll see what we can do.
Let's try this.
Beautiful. We can see it now.
Is that better? Okay, that's good.
Great. Thank you.
So I'm going to jump back real quick. So we are a financial services company, bank and insurance and pension. And this is kind of the layout of our how our customers divide. So the main part of what we do is insurance. That's the main part of our business, but we also have a banking license and pension license and have quite a few customers there. And that's kind of what sets us apart in the market, is that we have all these three services in-house in the building, the licenses and all the platforms to provide these financial services. As I said, as you couldn't see, but as you heard, this is what we've been building during the past 1.5 years alongside. We've worked with agile transformation. And so what we have accomplished in this framework is that we had an old app, a mobile app, and we worked on kind of updating that using actually some of the data-driven design concepts that I'm gonna share here today. And the achievement is that we took the app from a rating of 1.8 in the App Store to 4.3 in the App Store where it is now. So the story I'm gonna tell is mainly about how did we get there and how did data-driven design help us get there. Yeah. So a webinar is a first for me. So I hope you will forgive the technical issues and the occasional stutter. Classic webinar is you go to listen to an expert giving very masterful tips, and you're gonna go out being a master at something. This webinar is us sharing super early. So we are in the very beginning of our journey here towards data-driven design. We are a super young design chapter in the company, establishing ourselves as a group. But we've had some very good experiences with actually sharing early. And we try to do that as much as possible, trying to shake off our fears of sharing early, because then we can get some feedback. So hopefully for all the user experience experts out there in the end, you can correct me on all the things that we got wrong. So yes, data-driven design. What does that actually mean? So I'm gonna try to break down the different parts of this real quick. So when we look at data, this is what we're kind of looking at, and this is the perspective I'm gonna talk from. So we have quantitative data, which is numerical and shows the who, the what, the when, and the where. So that could be sessions on your number of sessions on your page or time spent within an app. Then we have the qualitative data, which is non-numerical data that demonstrates kind of the why or the how something is going on the way it is. And so what we've, so this is how kind of our view of data. So if we look into design, I'm sure many of you have seen this hundreds, maybe even thousands of times, but this is a classic design thinking model. And what we have also done earlier here, but also what I've kind of observed is that when we try to apply data in this framework for many design projects, we use quantitative data a lot in the beginning. So in the understand phase, where we go out and maybe get some demographic data, read a bunch of reports in our desk research phase, and then kind of also maybe talk to some users, but then define the issue, the problem, to get the problem right, and then kind of branch out and ideate for the right solution. And this is where we usually do co-creation with users or go out and do some interviews, so super qualitative part, and then we come up with a concept. So what we're trying to do here is we're trying to bring that quantitative part of the data back into the loop, try to create more synergy between the two types of data. Another thing about design doing is, or design thinking, is that in our context, where we are a company that works to deliver something to the users, there's also that part. So, and that's kind of not encapsulated here. So what I'm going to propose here is what we're actually doing here is we're doing design doing. So it's the right problem, the right solution, and it's also delivered to the users. So that's our context. So for me, that means I'm in a team and I sit with a front-end developer, a back-end developer. We have a search engine optimization specialist. Then we'll have someone from the insurance business to kind of educate us and help us with those things. And so we try to create teams that doesn't have any dependencies other places in the building. So that means we can find the right problem, the right solution, then we can actually build that, bring it out in the world. So in this case, it would be maybe doing a release in the application, try to measure quantitatively and qualitatively, how is this thing working? Because as you know, if you have a concept, it needs to get out in the world. Then it's going to take its own shape. The users are going to appropriate it their way, and it's going to probably be something else than what you've imagined in your prototype. I'm not going to go too much, or basically not at all, into agile transformation. We've been through that process, and we're continuously in that process. But basically, what that means for us is that we've trying to move towards end-to-end teams. So this is what I'm trying to show here, that these are teams that are built up of these different competencies that can actually deliver something without having to go anywhere else. Super important part about this is that this is autonomous teams. That means we can choose what we want to build and how we want to do it. What that, of course, also requires is that we do some we get some responsibility about doing the right thing. In Alm. Brand, we're about 11 teams on different stages of the agile journey. And these 4 teams pictured here, this is the teams that are working on consumer-facing solutions. So we have teams working on AI, cloud computing, and all that good stuff, and a bunch of internal systems. And then we have these 4 teams working on customer-facing solutions. And it's kind of from that perspective I'll be talking today. 4 teams, I hope you're thinking that's not a lot when you have more than 400,000 customers, and that's right. So that's a very specific challenge that we have. The problem that I'm going to illustrate now is a problem in Agile. It was also a problem in a waterfall-based project model, and that's the stakeholder ideas. So in any company in any given time, there's hundreds, maybe thousands of ideas of what to develop. And if you have limited capacity of development, so development time is also expensive, it's super important you find out what to do. So in the old days, I was about to say, but previously in a waterfall-based model where we do a project plan, set up a team, maybe the designer does the work, then passes it on to the development IT department. And then it could take a year maybe to develop something. Then this resource scarcity was also a problem, but they had a kind of good solution for that, and that's what has been described as a HIPPO. And HIPPO stands for highest paid person's opinion. So that would basically mean that if we have all these ideas, the ones that would get made was the one with that the bosses and maybe the boss's boss chose to get made. The problem with that thing is that the highest paid person's opinion is not better than anyone else's opinion. And I think that's been proven quite a few times. Oftentimes, they don't look like the users they're trying to do something for. Yeah. So another idea about all of this, one thing is how we choose which idea to build, but another thing is just the idea in general. So, and this is in the context of data-driven design, but in a general way, you could say that ideas are cheap, they are easy, they come without any limitations. You don't have to define why an idea is good for the business or for the user. You can just have an idea and say, let's build an app. And in a previous framework, also here at Alm. Brand, then that would mean maybe a boss would come and say, let's build an app. And we had to do it. So we've tried to figure out what can we put instead of ideas when we're looking for what to develop. and that is the hypothesis. So an hypothesis, contrary to an idea, is something that is grounded in reality. It comes with an inherent, so a built-in requirement to prove it or disprove it. So we actually accept that we may be wrong here, also something that is new and healthy for anyone working with software development. And so it means we can actually kind of qualify what should we be working on, and is the thing that we delivered, did it work or not? And this is a format of a hypothesis, and you could say that this is an abductive scientific method. So we make an observation about something, and then we give our best guess of what might be true. So as you can see here, this is the framework from Øvad and Pinjura from business model generation. We believe that something, to verify that we will something, and measure this thing, we are right if. I'm just going to show a bit more concrete example. So this is the app example. So let's say I want to take that app idea and formulate it to a hypothesis. So we could say, we believe that we can increase our users' experience by building an app. To verify that, we will build the app and measure user happiness on a scale of 1 to 5. We are right if user happiness is more than 4. So what we've then done here is that we've made an observation and then given our best guess grounded in reality of what might be true, knowing that it's probably not true. And so this is not a hypothesis that is grounded in real life. We will get to some that we actually did develop, but this is just for the example part. Yeah, so let's say in the perfect world, everyone is just formulating hypothesis now. We are not there yet, but let's say for the manner of this example that we were. So then you get this. So we have stakeholders that have hypothesis, wants and needs, but we also have a method ourselves to kind of develop a bunch of hypotheses of what we should develop. So yeah, and what you can see here is that basically the team has a huge responsibility. If we regard the limit, there's only these 4 teams. You have a huge responsibility to develop the right thing, to actually create value, because otherwise we use that very, very expensive, valuable developer time. And when I say developers, I mean all team members. So that encompasses also designers, business person, SEO specialists. Those are all developers in our framework. So what we've done is we're trying to create a framework that can kind of help us build the right thing. And so this is called the dynamic roadmap. And the dynamic roadmap is inspired by some brilliant people over at 1508, which is a Danish design agency. Then we kind of adapted a framework they proposed and try to make it our own. So I'm going to briefly run through that here. Also, they have a great talk on this. It's called Design Doing a Strategy on Demand. And you can see that in the bottom right here. I would encourage everyone to go check that out. Basically, what this roadmap is about, it's about setting some strategic goals or maybe some focus areas of what we want to achieve. So that's what we have here in the top. And the strategic goals could be something about customer experience, customer happiness. We want happy customers. It could be something about making some money. It could be something about our tech platform that we need to do AI or machine learning, have a modern tech platform, or it could be a goal like we want to be a purple unicorn in a very homogeneous market, which could also be the case. I'm going to focus for this part on the user happiness part. So in our case here, we want really happy customers. So we try to make a statement of what is the desired state? What is it we actually mean when we say we want happy customers? And I'm going to show an example in a bit. Then if we look at the very bottom, then we have the current state. And the current state is where we go back and actually say, okay, what's the situation right now? And being super honest and also using data to figure out what's the current state. I'm going to show that in practice also later. So the current state could be, we like to use quotes. So what we're hearing the users saying about us, sometimes we use actual comments they made to kind of illustrate the point of, okay, today the users might not be super happy. We did an app, but we didn't do our online part yet. We might have some challenges in our communication. We are still sending letters. That could be exemplified in our diagnosis. So we want to go from a diagnosis to a desired state that helps us reach a specific goal, in this case, happy customers. So what we can do now is we can take all our best guesses, our hypotheses, and they will kind of show us the way how to get there. And that's the green squares here. So the hypotheses are kind of, what is our best guess about what we should do to try to reach some of the goals? So of course, one hypothesis is not going to give us all happy customers everywhere, but we can do small parts. We can break this down, and then we can actually put this into a 2-week release cycle. And I forgot to mention, that's our release cycle here at On Brand. We try to have a feature release or software release every 2 weeks. Right, so let's see how that looks. So this is actually a simplification, but a real life example of how we're working with this. So we have strategic goals. We want happy customers, happy users. And what we say is, for to make that goal measurable, we say that 80% of the users using our digital platform must rate us 4 or more on a 1 to 5 scale. And a quote that we would like to hear, that would be something like a customer saying, all my digital needs are met on Brand's platforms. I feel that they care for me as a person, and I receive advice and recommendations when it's relevant. The current state, and this is a very honest current state, is I like the current features in the app, but I often have to call to get my issues resolved. I don't get advice or recommendations, and I don't care anyway, because insurance is super boring. Also, there are 2 different self-service sites, which is super confusing. So that's a very honest way to say, okay, this is where we're at. This is where we want to get to. And what is our best guess to get there that we can build in 2 weeks? And so then we can zoom in on a hypothesis. So here, this is not a real example. We will get to the real examples, and we will get to the tools in just a moment. But this is an example where we say, we believe that we can increase our users' experience by proactively giving advice on insurance. To verify that, we will send notifications with advice on insurance and measure user happiness on a scale of 1 to 5. We are right if user happiness is more than 4. So this is way more powerful than just having an idea saying we should send some notifications. So this is a simplified example. What we like to do with our hypothesis is only test one thing at a time and be super, super specific about what are we actually going to build and how are we actually going to measure it. But I think that's gonna hurt the illustration of the example, but I'm gonna show some hypotheses later as well. So since we have 6 great ideas here, we need to prioritize those as well. Where do we start? Since time is super expensive here, our development time. So we use an impact effort graph here. So you can see low effort on the left, high effort on the right. And the y-axis is high impact and low impact. So we can kind of map these hypotheses in and see, okay, if we should start somewhere, we would like to start with the lowest effort that gives us the highest impact. So we are looking for things that are in the top left quadrant. And then we can kind of say, okay, this is the winner. Let's go ahead and test it, build it and test it. So what happens over time is that you will see some of the hypotheses will actually help reaching the goal because we can measure that. But some of them will turn out to be disproven. So we will be wrong a lot of times. We are fortunate enough that we are very early in the journey, so that makes it easier for us to find the low-hanging fruits. You will see one of them earlier on. So we have a lot of things that are basically a given that we have not done yet. So it automatically gives us a huge leap in user experience when we do those things. So over time, it should be harder and harder to find something that you can actually prove. I hope that makes sense, because if you get really good at this, then you will have disproven a bunch of things, or you would have proven a bunch of things, and it would be super hard to actually prove more. You would be wrong all the time. So that's kind of the goal for us here. All right. that was the framework, and I brought this because I think the context is super important as it relates to the practicalities of what we're actually working with. So we're going to dive into that. So as described in the talk, I said I'm going to talk about how we use data to identify user pains, shape our digital products, and figuring out what to develop right now. And let's look at how one example of how we could identify user pain. This is the most basic one, and this is actually, I think, more than 2 years ago we did this, but this was one of the first times where we really started to dig into the data that we have on our own platforms to find some user pains. So this page right here, this is a contact page. So you can see it has some phone numbers. It has a red button that if you crash your car, so you can report claims here to your insurance. And then we have this write us box, and we're using a CMS system that actually can give us some of these components. So this write us box is actually data for us. So for the user, it's them putting in an entry saying, I have this issue, please help. For us, it's also, so of course we need to route that to the person that can help, but also for us, it's data. So on the top here, they can choose the branch. So this means insurance, banking, pension, what's the topic? So that's quantitative data of what is the topic of their entry. But down here in the comment, we have something interesting. Then we have a free text form field. And then we're going to get some qualitative data. So that's going to tell us something about the why. Why did they actually write us? What was their issue? And what we can do is when we collect the qualitative data as well, then instead of just using it as something to inform us and say, okay, we found an issue, let's build it, we can actually go in and quantify the whys. So we can say something like, okay, we knew what was the topic of the entry, how many selected this topic, that's the numbers we get. Then we need to go in and analyze qualitatively on the why. So that's on the actual text messages. And then we can go back into quantitative mode and say, okay, how many actually experience this particular issue? And that data is going to feed back into the prioritization of our hypothesis. So which hypothesis are we going to choose? Well, we're going to choose the one that where the most people experienced the issue. Right. So another example, so this is when we had a page and we were doing an increment. Other times you have to start from scratch. You're building something completely new. And that's what we were doing with our app when we started. We did have an old self-service universe, quite old, I think about maybe 8 or 10 years since that project finished, and then it wasn't touched since. Then it just kept on living in the form it was. And so what we did is now we had to figure out what should we build first, because we have a mindset that says we want to build something super slim, a super small delivery. So what should we build first? So what we implemented was a tool called Usabilla. And many of you might know it if we the food delivery app Vault. I think they have a great usage of this third-party app. Basically, what it is it's an emotional score of 1 to 5 that can be triggered by a button press, a mouse over on time, on user segments, and it can also be implemented as a widget here in the app. So this is what you see on the left. So I'm just going to show you how we used that. And let's go now to here. Yeah, so this is how we implemented it in our app, and I'm gonna actually try to do a live demo of this, which I promised myself I wouldn't do, but now we're gonna do it anyway. So I hope you can see the screen. This is our app, but it's, of course, as you can see, faked in a web view. We have a hybrid app, so that means that we can run it both in the native app and on the website as well. So basically what you see down here, this is the module that I just showed you. And let's say I'm a customer coming in here and I want to give some feedback. I'm gonna give it a heart. That's the quantitative part. How many liked our app. Now comes the qualitative part. Why did I like it? Because they use data-driven design to develop features. So I'm going to send that. So now that is received, and what we get then is, if I go here and I update this, then I'm going to go in. This is usability actual tool. And so I'm just going to find that particular widget. We can put these widgets everywhere we want within our app. And I'm going to take this one. This is the one we used before. And so you can see my answer here. So we get a lot of quantitative data about the what's. So what OS, what kind of phone, which language was I using, when and where. That's also quantitative data. And then I get, really importantly, the why. So yeah, so that's really good. I'm just going to delete this because this is our actual thing. And I promise on my life, I didn't plan this, but this comment here, it says, even a child of 4 would be able to figure out this app. So that's kind of cute. So all the hearts, that's all well and nice, but we can use it to some things, but what I'm really interested here and actually is who was not satisfied. So I can actually filter that up here. Let me try and do that. So here I get a lot of unhappy customers, and those are the ones I want to try to help. I want to make their experience better. So that's how I can do that right here in the app. So once I've done this, I can actually analyze the text, and then I can go back and quantify. And so I'm going to show you an example of that. I can put that data into something like this. I'm sure there are smarter ways of doing this. We haven't automated it yet, but that might be a thing for the future. So here I've taken all the data that I got in a certain period of time in here, and we're going to zoom in on the unhappy customers. Those are the red notes. And this was sometime in May and June. And we can see that 23% of the unhappy customers said something about an inbox. And so this yellow inbox note, we used analysis. So we read all the comments and we coded them like you would in a user interview. We coded all the comments on like what was their incentives to write and what kind of keywords were there and so on. And then what we got was, we get the quantitative part here. So we know now quantitatively 23% of people want an inbox, but we don't know why. So if we want to find out the why, we might go down and look at a note like this, and it's in Danish, so I'm going to translate. I can't see my mail, or I can't see my inbox in the app. And you wrote me an email saying to go to the inbox. So that's kind of a good reasoning. Why is this user unhappy? Because we actually sent him an email to go check his inbox, and we didn't develop the inbox feature in the app yet. Luckily, this is a green check mark, which means that the inbox feature is already there. Yeah, so that's how we use Usabilla. I'm going to give one more example with Usabilla because it's a pretty strong tool. In the very beginning of the app, when we didn't have anything, we needed to know where to start. And so what we did, we put this framework on our old application, and we did a intent survey. So a pop-up like this that says, help us get better, we value your opinion. What is the intent of your visit today? So then they have a bunch of categories. It could be to find contact information, look at my pension, change my profile, or something else. And we got 11,000 responses on this actual survey. So that's kind of strong argument in the organization of where should we start. Now we have a good idea about that. And then Usabilla can actually take that data and kind of display it for us. So here we can see most of the people that visited us, they came to check their coverage. And then they came to see their prices. And then they came for something else, which we didn't know at the time. So we know if we build an MVP, we can start by just showing the coverages and the prices and the insurance. Then we can build something super small, start collecting feedback on that iteration, and then we can do another iteration. Also, we had to figure out, what is this something else? If they came to do something else, what is that? So what we could also do is take that other filter by that, and then we get a word mosaic, and what do you know? We have email and mail again. So that's a good way to say, okay, we should probably develop an inbox. And I think if I jump back to this presentation, you can see what we just saw now is we saw how many were happy and sad, which devices and where, why they were happy and sad. That was the message part. And then we use quantitative data again to say how many were actually happy and sad, to kind of drive our design towards something that would give the one thing that would give the most value. And the hypothesis we used in this case was, we believe that an inbox in the app will increase customer happiness significantly. To verify that, we will design and develop an inbox for the app and measure, and now I put on in-app usability score because this is how we measure these things. We are right if average increases from 3 to 4. Right, I hope that makes sense. So this is kind of the way we try to work on prioritization and identifying user pains. I'm going to show a few more examples. I hope I can see time is running, but I'm going to speed through these because these are fun as well. The UX, a lot of the UX designers out there will know Hotjar, which is a screen recording heat map tool. We don't use heat maps that much because we have varying sites. So that means if I have 10 insurances, my site will look different than yours if you have one. And if you multiply that with 400,000, it's a bit weird with heat maps for us. So, but what we do use is funnels. So a funnel is basically a way to track where, and this is the quantitative part, where is the users dropping off. So in this case, it's a purchase flow for travel insurance. And we can see that 3,000 people tried to, or entered the page, and then they dropped off gradually. What this does not tell us is, it doesn't tell us the why. Why are they dropping off? We can see the what, we can see how many, we can actually also see who, but we can't see why they're dropping off here. So we use screen recordings in Hotjar as well for that, and I'm just going to show because we have to share our mistakes. So this is a good one. This is a user trying to enter his car type, and he's not getting through. And the reason he's not getting through is because there's a bug. There's a software bug in this input field. So that kind of informs us about why are these people not getting through. It could also be true that it's because they didn't want to buy the insurance. But in this case, we would probably be able to tag these up and say, okay, he has an input field bug, and then we could kind of start to quantize how many has this bug. So it's a super good way also to find mistakes. We of course strive to make perfect code, but in my experience, there's no such thing. So what we are really trying to do well as well is to fix things fast if we see them, and try to see them fast also. Yeah, recordings are also super fun. You will always see when you put something out there, then users will use it in a different way that you intended. And we have a few good examples of that. Another thing we use a lot is Google Analytics. I'm not going to dive into that platform. I hope a lot of you knows it. It's basically Google's analytics software for websites that can tell something about a lot of the quantitative data about who is visiting your site, and well, not who, but more how many people are visiting your site and which sites. How long time did they spend? Quantitative data. And we use that in a very particular way. We combine it with an app called Data Studio, which is also from Google. And the reason we use that app is because it allows us to create dashboards. So we can actually blow these things up on the screen and be super transparent about our traffic, and kind of show everyone in the organization, this is what is happening right now. And so this is why we made this hypothesis of what to fix. So this is a simple part where we're just tracking some clicks. We also did some more advanced parts where we're actually looking at specific features. This is where you can modify your insurance. So you can see over here, there was a lot, the 1500 number, that's a lot of people that try to add something to their insurance. And the 186 are people trying to remove something from their insurance. So that was a super interesting finding for us. Then when we built the feature, it turned out that people were actually wanted to add things when they were in the app. They didn't want to remove things. And that was good for us because our stakeholders were not that much into that we also actually developed the remove feature. But we did that in the spirit of the autonomous team. Yes. We've also experimented with using Google Analytics combined with our CMS platform for A/B testing. So we do the tracking via analytics, and then we use our CMS to show 50% of the users one feature and 50% of the users another feature. And basically this is the same feature, but it's just different tweaks on it. So we've had super good leading results with this, but we are not that experienced with this yet. And that's because A/B testings are super good for incremental testing. So here it's the same feature. It's about finding out, do you want to order a call or do you want to call someone directly? And it didn't give us any result. But what we figured out once we start using the dynamic roadmap is that we have so many big features or so many low-hanging fruits that to go in into the actual tweaks, that will be some months from now. But then we're definitely going to start using these A/B testing frameworks again. Yeah. Okay, I made it to the end, and I think we're also in good time, so that's super great. And I hope there's some questions out there also. A few learnings from our, so this was kind of a diving into how we use some tools to get find user pains and how those insights kind of shape our digital products. And then it was also a lot about how and when to build, or when to build the right thing. And I hope that was okay that I brought that part. It's super important for us, and it helps us a lot in our everyday. A few learnings here is that hypothesis beats ideas in this context of data-driven design. Test and launch small, early, and often. That was something that was super hard for us. We wanted to build everything within that app. It was cringy to not have that inbox feature, but because we launched our app without the inbox feature, that means that a large part of users actually were experiencing a lot of value still. And then they got the inbox feature right after that. And that's kind of, we're working with the 80-20 principles. So try to design to the 80%, because when you start designing to the 20% or the 10% or the 5%, you're going to spend huge amounts of time on that. And there will almost always be some low-hanging fruits if you look at the broader group. Then enable teams and colleagues. That's something we've worked with a lot. So we did a few 2-day workshops for the data studio part, the dashboard part that we showed you here. This is something that all teams are able to do. And that took us just a few days working with an expert external consultant to kind of train us in how to do this. And we sat with the developers, and now all teams are using this. Yeah, and then we didn't talk so much about data sensitivity. I hope you saw in Hotjar that we are super careful about blocking everything out. So we only get what we need. We don't need to see what's your name at all. We don't need person sensitive data to make the experience better. We can know a lot of things about your click behavior. But then what we found out is that if there is a text input, and I've been talking a lot about, that's where we get your qualitative data. If there's a text input, then there's sensitive user data. So the users will write, this was my issue. Also, this is my social security number, and here's the health situation of my child, and so on and so forth. So you have to be super careful and super concentrated and thorough, and with your third-party deliverers or third-party providers. So Usabilla, we have a great connection with, and your legal department and your security department. And that's a whole talk on itself on how we can work with those guys. Yeah, and then users will help you create great experiences for them if you ask. I don't know if I showed that, but in the usability section, we have around 8,500 ratings, and we think that's quite a bit. We don't do any pop-ups or anything like that. It's just a totally opt-in thing. So the users will actually help us if we ask them. Yeah. So that was kind of the first steps on our journey. We're looking super forward to keep working with this. We're super excited. We know it's not just designers. We're hearing from developers as well, that they really like this way of working, that we can know as a team that what we are doing, what we're developing is something that makes sense for the users.
And that sounds great. I think this was a very interesting talk. So I will actually start. We have had a lot of questions in the Q&A, but I will ask the first question. So you talk about this work and this app. Are you working with prototypes at all, or is it always implemented directly into working software, working code?
No, we start off with prototypes. We use Adobe XD here. So yeah, we start up using prototypes, and we will also go out and test those, but those are most for the usability parts. If it's a feature that we want to know, will people actually use this, then we would rather deliver it and see if they would use it in their own homes. So where we do, and maybe this sounds like that we're not doing any qualitative traditional interview work, we do that as well, but mainly for like new features or when we want to go really explorative, to learn something new that we hadn't thought of. And then for usability testing, it's super good to see where are people actually clicking with your own eyes.
Yeah, great. So we have a question coming here. Simon, can you elaborate on the teams? How many are typical in a team and which competencies?
Right. So yeah, and I wish I had more time to go into this. I actually brought the whole section of our agile setup and how we're working with teams. So I'm super happy for that question, but we have to talk about that in another talk. But the teams are made up so that they can solve the issues they're trying to solve. So for example, the team I'm in is a growth team. So that means our makeup is we will have, or we do have a social media specialist, a Google search engine optimization specialist. Then we also doing the actual product configuration. So we have a backend developer, a front-end developer, and then we actually have 2 designers. So and you can read in the Scrum guide, but I think it's about 7 to 8 is kind of a good number for teams. But in our case, since we're doing growth, we need that extra step of the customer journey. So that would be when someone Googles something or sees an ad on Facebook. So then we need that competency in the team. But I think in here it ranges from minimum of 6, 7, and then I think there's someone that's been 11. But also the teams are dynamic as well. So let's say we're working on something one day, and then we kind of try to test another hypothesis, and my work is not needed in the team, then I'm able to change to another team.
Okay, so can you change like after sprint, or is that like, what are the cadence there? So can you just jump between teams as you like, or as you need to, or is it possible to do like between sprints, or can you do it like within a sprint and so on?
I think you could if you wanted to, but we have a firm belief in that strong teams stay together for a long time. And that's also my experience, is that when we've been together, you kind of go through the different phases of team structure. So maybe it's super stormy in the beginning, and then you kind of get to a normal phase, and then you start really performing. And that actually takes a bit of time to get to know each other, figure out all the quirks and how to get better. Also, we're doing, of course, retrospectives for every sprint. So the team is trying to get better for every sprint. We're also trying to pick one thing that we want to do better as a team. And that, of course, builds. So we actually don't see a lot of switching between teams. And we consider that a good thing, but there's no law against it. There's no one governing us. If you want to work on something else that is more interesting, then you could raise it, and I'm sure we would be able to do it.
Yeah, great. So we have one more question here. So how do you decide which solution is high impact and low effort? Do you discuss it as a team, or does the team decides it?
Yeah, super good question. And I forgot to mention that. Yeah, the team will usually do that, and that's the entire team. So that's also the backend developer in the very deepest of databases. He also gets the same vote as everyone else. So we've done it as a team. We've also experimented it doing on the between all the teams that are working in this framework. So where we send out, I think we were about 6 at the time. So we send out all the different hypotheses, and then we did a survey where we said, how much, if we build this, how much impact will it give to our users? We just did a Google survey, Google Forms thing. If we build this, how much impact will it give on a scale of 1 to 5? And then ask the same question, how hard will it be to build? And then send it out to all the front-ender, back-enders, user experience designers, all the team, agile team members, to get kind of the common opinion of what's the impact and what's the effort. Okay. But impact measurements, that's a good point also. We are super involved with those, and for that we can draw on a lot of data. So what's a good example? Right now we are doing a new claims reporting process. So when you crash your car, example, or you fall off a ladder, so you have to report that. So we started in car insurance specifically to make sure we could do something in 14 days. But the reason we started there is that's because of 90% of the claims we get is from car insurance. So sometimes there will be some other data that we didn't generate. That's something that we got from the claims department, that they said, well, 90% of the claims that we get come from cars. So then it's obvious for us to start there. So it's not just the teams. We try to get as much knowledge as we can, because we do have a lot of data in the house in general.
Okay, great. So we have one more here. We actually have time, so that's nice. There's a lot of questions coming in, so people are very interested. So you organized 23% of the unhappy commenters based on keywords, or do you manually do it, or do you do it using any automated system?
We do it manually, so it's time consuming. And for the first box I showed you guys with the that had the contact form fields, maybe I find that one again. That was actually this one. That was, we get around, I think maybe 100 entries a month or a week, maybe a week. We get an insane amount of entries. So for this part, I actually went through 623 comments and coded them by hand, like you would an interview. Of course, it's briefer comments. We are working, not in my team, but we have a team that's working on AI. That's not actually for these comments, that's for the phone calls we get. So we are trying to do an AI model. So when people are calling in, we get, I think maybe 80,000 calls a month. So we want to try to take that speech, make it into text, and kind of see patterns in what are people actually calling us about. And we want to do that same thing for chat. So we don't have to do that much by hand. But that's a bit out in the future. That's teams that just started.
Okay. Oh, that's interesting. Also, like being able to distribute it more like into the whole organization, and maybe also use the same tools. I think that sounds very promising. So if your quantitative data shows a repetitive issue, that involves high effort and high impact, then how will you approach that hypothesis?
Yeah, so one person I did not mention in the team is the product owner. So let's say in my team, we have a designer, we have developers, we have maybe search engine specialists, and someone that knows a lot about insurance. And we also have a person who is the product owner. So the product owner's role is to kind of manage the stakeholders' wants and needs and create that priority of the backlog of what we want to build. So if there's something, so it's basically, you can use data only so far. In the end, we have to make our best guess. Is this impact worth the high effort that it takes? Well, we have to give our best guess, and then we have to build it super small. So if it's something that's high effort, then we try really hard to break it down and say, what's the least amount of work we can do here to kind of prove that it works or disprove that it will work. So that's kind of the mindset.
Yeah, so I actually have a question on my own here, because we talk about data-driven design. Would you say it's data-driven design or more data-informed design you're working with right now? Like when you make decisions, are it up for like, no matter like what you see in the data, you trust that completely? Or are you still like going back and saying, okay, from a UX point of view, we definitely believe that we definitely need to go more into details here, because the data is a bit maybe weird on this issue.
Oh, that's a tough question.
I know, and I'm throwing you a bit under the bus now.
I mean, the designer still has a role. Since we're on that topic, I did bring something for kind of an extra part, and that's if we look at this, you can still see the screen, right?
Yeah, we can see it.
So this kind of plots in where I made some examples that we use data to understand, define, and also when we, and this is called prototype, but basically when we measure what we've built, but we don't use it as much when we try to ideate. I mean, come up with the thing that we should build. And so we've seen a few good examples of this. So this is Adobe XD, which is our prototype tool of choice. And they have what I think is a super good community where the users can go in and give their ideas of what should be the next thing to build. And you can kind of vote up, and they have a whole community. The same thing is true for a company called DPD, which is a UK parcel deliverer, which my good friend was so kind to share with me. And they kind of also have a pretty big community of people that can share their ideas and they can vote. And that's kind of something that we would like to also dive in next to see, can we bring the users in? So it's, yeah, I don't know if that even answers the question, but
in a way it does. And more like also from my perspective, because now I'm very curious, of course. So if you want to do that, because I could imagine your app is something, this is not an app you use every day. So do you have like any ideas of how you want to like draw attention to the possibility of actually adding in some requests for the app? Or like, I can imagine like if it was an app used every day, for instance, like the Spotify app, it's easier to engage people in coming with new features there. Yeah. But your app is more like when you actually have an issue, right?
Yeah. And what I would say is, I would go back to the baby slide now, because we are not there yet. Yeah. That's the honest truth, is that we have, we're over 200-year-old organization, and we have 200 years of technical debt. So technical debt does not have to be in software. It turns out it can also be in the way insurances are made. Yeah. So we actually have a bunch of low-hanging fruits, but which are high effort. So we're not missing features. We're not like hungering for ideas. We know we have a pretty good idea of what our next steps are. They might be wrong. I mean, it could be that we're get our hypothesis disproven, but we are quite convinced. The inbox example is a good one, and we have a few others. For example, you can't use this application that I showed you right now on the web. So that means we're missing out on half our customers. They're using something that's 10 years old. And it's not a high effort thing to do. So that's next up. So so that's kind of just to say that's where we are right now. We have a bunch of things that are low hanging fruits and where we can really excel our user experience. And then in the future, it's going to be interesting to see how we're going to use data to design new things. Yeah. Maybe to innovate, right?
Great. Yeah, that sounds great. Also, I can imagine like it's just a big old ship to turn, right? So things takes time as well. But I think it's so nice to hear that you actually already have some ideas on how to do stuff, right? And like improve also the processes around how you work. I think that was all for now. We have a lot of questions coming in still, but we will have a session after this one where we talk about those and you answer the relevant ones. So I think I will say thank you so much for a very interesting talk, Simon. And to you behind the screen, thank you for joining. Remember, we have our next UX meetup. And if you have any ideas or suggestions on how we can improve these online meetups, then let us know. And also if you have some names in mind you would like to hear talk next, let us know and we'll see how, if we can make it work. So keep an eye on your inbox for a recording of the whole session here, and also a recording of Simon answering all the other questions coming. And I think that was all for now. So thank you for now. Thank you for joining, and have a great day, everyone. And we talk later, Simon.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.